All right. So no, I'm not. Why is it I'm not getting the list of participants, Shoaib? I'm not too good in these.
You just need to go to the participant. 20 of them already.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that, but I can't get their names. Yeah, that's why I'm trying to find the names. Why is this happening?
If you just click on those, I think you can get it. I'm getting them.
You getting it? Oh, there's something's wrong with my. No, I don't have to share my screen. Why is this share screen? Okay. All right. So let's see. Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Bhandari, can I do on behalf of
Yeah, I
you?
got it. I got it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Rajan, you are the first on my list. Can you just introduce yourself to, a sentence or two for your background?
Yeah, namaste everybody. I'm Rajan Sharma from Nepal, a former president in the Freight Forwarders Association, at the moment working with the International Trade Center for making trade happen from Nepal to the different countries, for third countries. I'm with the World Bank at the moment as a short-term consultant for transport and logistics as well as private sector expert.
Wow, great, great. Thank you, Rajan. Thank you. Chimi, may I call Chimi? Very briefly, just your name and organization you represent. Hello. Chimi, are you there? No.
Shimi is muted. Shimi is muted.
Is she, may I request the participants to unmute and introduce yourself and mute again, all right? Please. Chimi, can you hear me? No. Okay. Hello. MFA Bhutan. Hello. Hello. Foreign
Hello.
Ministry Bhutan.
Hello. Yes, I'm Tsering.
Cheering from Foreign Ministry, all right?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So let's see. Let's see. Um, um, let's see. If I see some, which organization they represent, I'm just going to, say so that we save time. All right. Okay. So we have Pema Wangdi from Ministry of Finance. We have another Pema from Ministry of Finance. That's in Bhutan. We have from the Tourism Council of Bhutan, we have Funso Gelsen. We have Sering Wangdi. Could you please introduce yourself, please, the organization you represent, Sering?
Hello. As I said before, I'm from the Department of Regional Cooperation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Okay, so you're using two IDs, is it?
The other one could be my friend.
Okay, good. Okay, all right, that's good. And then let me go to other participants who are from outside. Alka Shri Prasad, please. No. Dakpa Gelsen. Hello.
Hello, Kuzuzangpo. Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you, Dakpa.
Yes. I am Dr. Gelsin from Department of Industry, Ministry of Economic Affairs.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Hello.
I wonder if Chimi is back.
Hello.
Yes, please introduce yourself, Chimi. Hello?
Hello, I'm Alka Sri Prasad. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, Alka. Okay, we can hear you.
Oh, hello, I'm Alka Sri Prasad from Viswabharati University. I am a PhD scholar and my research area is international trade.
Which university did you say, please? Could you repeat it?
Viswabharati University.
Vishwabharati. Oh, okay, okay. Very famous, very famous. All right. Okay, then Devraj Ghale was with the with the Royal Monetary Authority until very recently, and I think he's interested to continue participate. I believe he recently resigned. Gopal Pradhan, if I'm not mistaken, he's from the Consumer Protection, organization from the Ministry of Economic Affairs. Then Jigdale, Jigdale, could you introduce yourself, please, briefly?
Good morning. I'm Jigdral Singh from the Regional Department of Regional Cooperation.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I'm glad that
Thank
Foreign
you,
Ministry is represented well. I just missed your name. Okay. We have Jamyang Lofel from the Department of Agriculture, Marketing and Cooperatives. Kielzang, could you introduce yourself, please? We have two Kielzang. One is Kielzang Bhutan, and one is just Kielzang. So I'm requesting Kielzang.
Thank you, Dasho. Good to see you. And I'm Kezang, CEO of the Better Park and the new normal politician with Dukthandil Sokpa, sir. Dasho, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I notice your new journey. Good luck, Kielzang, and good to see you after a long time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Then we have Kielzang Bhutan. Somebody here? Kielzang Bhutan.
Good morning, sir. Dasho.
Morning.
I'm Kelzong, currently serving in Bhutan Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Oh, great. Thank you. We have Kinga Singhe from, again, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Right. Then let me just quickly go if we have any more. One, there is LPAI ICP, Land Post Authority of India, is it? ICP, which ICP? Could somebody introduce it?
Bhandari, I guess he's from Petropol.
Wow, okay, good. We've got from quite a few places, all right? Yeah, all right. We have Sangit Jose from Department of Macroeconomic Affairs in Foreign Ministry. We have Srijana Tiwari from Ministry of Information and Commerce and Civil Supplies in Nepal. And we have Ugen Doji, District Livestock Officer, maybe from Punakha. So we let's I think we've got about 30 or so. I think it's about good time to start because we've just almost 10:10. All right. Good morning to everybody. My name is Achyut Bhandari, as many of you will know. I'm at the moment I'm associated with the Center for Research on Bhutanese Society, CSO, that was founded 2 years ago, and I'm basically at the moment working for them and assisting the USAID SANIM team in conducting this program in capacity building for BIMSTEC, or let's say Bay of Bengal region countries in trade and connectivity. This is a program that has been funded by US aid, and they have USAID has contracted the task to South Asia Economic Modeling that's based in Dhaka, a very active and a prominent organization led by Dr. Salem Raihan. I have met him a couple of times, and he has been to Bhutan. Some of our participants might have met him. He's very dynamic, very, 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 a very well regarded and respected intellectual in our region. So his organization has been conducting this program since a year back. You may ask why so long, but there were a number of areas on which the US aid wanted to support in capacity building with their aim of supporting the regional integration in South and Southeast Asia. And we've had a good year, with varying number of participants from the 6 countries, which is Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Thailand at the moment. And there is another, 2 more months left before this program is wound up. So therefore, this is the first session in which there is a focus on Bhutan, and there will be another one tomorrow morning. So having said that, let me very quickly introduce our resource person today. Dr. Dambar Singh Khanka is pretty well known in Bhutan. That much I can say, and I'm sure he's also known in the academic circles, because he has written and published more than 12 articles on international journals, and he has a master's of economics from the New Brunswick University in Canada, and a PhD from California Metropolitan University, as well as Haryana School of Management. His background is very diverse: economics, business, corporate management, as well as academy. He has been teaching in RIM for I think about 15 years before he joined the Druk Holding and Investments, a large public sector corporation in Bhutan. And he has also worked in the People's Project, that was directly supervised by the palace. And he has received many awards, including Lifetime Achievement Award from His Majesty the King in Bhutan. So with that rich background, we look forward to listening to Dr. Kharga, during this course. For the benefit of participants, the session will, this session will go till 11:15, which is about an hour. Dr. Kharga will make a presentation for about 40 minutes. After that, we will engage into discussion. But if any of you have some very important issues, points to raise during his presentation, I have his permission to say that you can show your hands, or just unmute and ask a question. All right. So then we'll have a 15 minutes break, and after that he will continue the session till 1 o'clock today. That's Bhutan, Bangladesh time. Dr. Dambar Singh Kharka, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Dr. Achyut, for introducing me. Can I request for allowing me to upload my slides?
Surely. Shoaib, have you facilitated that facility?
Yes, I can share you on behalf of you, or you can also share. You are the co-host of the session now.
Okay. Let me get down and then check my files there. Can I request you to upload the file from that
Yes,
side?
yes, please. I believe you can see my screen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, let me welcome all the participants from, I believe they are participants from Nepal, Bangladesh, India, and Bhutan. Before I start at the outset, I would like to thank Sanim and USAID, CRBS, the co-founder Dr. Achut here, for dragging me into this discussion. And I'm very happy to be able to facilitate these discussions for 2 sessions. The topic given to me is Bhutan's, this is the basically the post-COVID macroeconomic growth and challenges facing Bhutan. When we discuss this, I think it would be equally important for other countries and also to share our thoughts and also listen from them during the discussion so as we can learn each other. At the outset, I would also like to say that today's discussions now, when I make a presentations, I'm not claiming to be really the expert in this field. Of course, I have done studies in economics area, macroeconomics and all that, but what I would like to tell is that this is not the real research that I have undergone through. I have collected materials from different sources, borrowed from the reports of RMA, World Bank, IMF, ADB, and National Statistical Bureau, and put them into certain sequence so that it would facilitate the discussions. And collecting all this information, sequencing and putting in one place would probably be useful to all the participants. And that was my belief. I have not really gone into any kind of modeling to analyze the data and see what may happen, or, I never used any kind of forecasting techniques and anything. I just collected informations, put that into certain sequence, and I would not claim this to be any kind of research or this is my declarations in the first place. The topic that we have, in my view, is very important and is very timely to be discussing on these issues because we are in that kind of economic crossroad at this stage in terms of preparing ourselves and moving forward to this post-COVID era. The regional trade and connectivity capacity development program for Bhutan is the topic on the Bay of Bengal Bay of Bengal Regional Trade and Connectivity Capacity Development Program for Bhutan. This is what has facilitated this. Therefore, this should be more in terms of capacity development rather than purely presenting my thoughts. I would encourage participants to come in between in any areas whenever things are not clear, to just raise hands or type in questions or discuss, but more so having the questions discussed towards the end during the Q&A sessions would be more useful so that the presentations can flow quite smoothly. But I'm open to both the models. I have my presentations broken down into 2 phases. When we talk about the macroeconomic growth, basically we look at things from fiscal aspects and also from the monetary aspects. We have friends here who are very, very familiar with, well, I'm sorry, what happened?
Dr. Farkas, should I go to the next slide? Just say.
I'll let you know, but what happened here? Okay, can you go to the next slide? And please move to the next slide again. That's already done. That's what I was telling, that I will have on the both side, fiscal side and monetary side. When I say fiscal side of economy, where the fiscal policies impact certain macroeconomic variables. Those are the variables that I would be terming that as the fiscal side variables. And I will be discussing on those. And after discussing on those fiscal side variables, I will also be highlighting certain things on the prospects and challenges ahead. Similarly, on the monetary side, in the second session, I would be talking more in terms of monetary policy, in terms of credit growth, NPL, inflation, interest rate, and foreign exchange positions, and the prospects and challenges that we have. And to provide the connections for the upcoming sessions for Dr. Dhakal, I would also be talking a little bit about the regional trade and then our regional integrations with whatever understanding I have, so that you will have a smooth connections to the next session. Next slide, please. Now, on the first sessions, I said the growth prospects and impacts in relations to public expenditure pattern, fiscal deficit analysis, current account analysis, public debt, labor market, and unemployment. These are some of the very important aspects on the macroeconomic when we look at it from the fiscal side, or any fiscal policy that may impact all these things. And as we know, understanding of public expenditure pattern, deficit, fiscal deficit, public debt, current account, and the labor market situations would be equally important to all the countries to have understanding, and also to anybody in Bhutan, whether somebody has an economics background or finance, whatever background it is, for every citizen, I think having certain amount of information and understanding would be important. So I put these slides and then I'll be discussing on these issues. Now, can you go to the next? First slide that I will be discussing would be on the I will be discussing will be on the changes in the output or the gross domestic product. Well, if you look at all these bars, Bhutan has been progressing very rapidly in the economic front, and then has reached the highest economic of the GDP of $2.54 billion in 2019. But because of the COVID impact, it has brought down by about 10% and brought down to 2.32 billion. Now, what does this mean? It is not just the data, but we have to go behind and see how many years are we thrown back by this pandemic. If you look at this, and later I will show you the percentage of changes, then you will see on each front. Now next year, 21, 22, even 23, by the end of 23 only, we will be reaching back to our 2029 level, which means we are gone back by 4 years. So can I go to the next slide, please? Now we estimate that the growth rate is going to be, of course, there are different forecasts by different organizations. ADB forecasted and given us that 21 would be 3.5% growth, whereas our own forecast from Royal Monetary Authority is 3.7%, and 22 is similar, but 23, there is a very optimistic growth as forecasted by ADB, whereas from the RMA report, I have also seen it is very close to only 4%, 3.9%. Now, with this kind of growth pattern, and with about 10.5%, 10.1% contraction in 2019, which then is called it in 2020, it will take few years for us to get back. Although there are growths here, but these growths are based on lower base, because in 2020, the base of GDP has really gone down by 10%, and now the growth is taking place on that lower base. So it will take us a little longer time. So about 3 to 4 years, I would estimate 4 years behind, and then we will be reaching 2029 in 4 years. Next slide, please. Now, when you compare this with the other countries in the region, basically here I have done it with the SAARC countries, and the overall SAARC average decline was little over 5%, around 5%, whereas we had gone down by about 10%. We were more sharply hit by the pandemic than the other countries. And even the growth post-pandemic, we see we will be picking up by around 3.7% immediately in 21-22, and then 4.5, and then maybe 4.9, or whichever forecast we may take. But overall average growth will be little lower than the 5%. And then other countries are likely to pick up a little faster, as we see this blue graph going up much faster also. And the reasons why we were hit more hard is because Bhutan adopted to more cautious approach, which is I think required for a small nations like Bhutan, with its very small populations, to go very cautiously in terms of managing the COVID, because we went more frequent lockdowns and for longer period lockdowns, and that has hurt the economy. And more than the economy, I think the focus was given more onto the managing of COVID situations. The overall other countries, like if you look at Thailand had also been hit by 6.2%, which is a little above the SAARC level average. But they started picking up much faster, and their economy base is very big. And ours is an economic base is very small. And if we also pick up at a similar kind of growth rate, like in other countries, or the average in the SAARC, then it will be a little difficult for us, because ours is a very small base, but we are growing even slower than the overall SAARC average, even with the smaller base. Therefore, this is a little bit of concerning for all of us in Bhutan. I think we'll have to look into ways and means of how we can focus more into these growth aspects. Can I have a next slide, please? Now, let's look at the per capita changes, because our per capita income in Bhutan has been growing, and growing quite fast, and taking us to right now, I think it's 3,216, about 3,300 US dollars. And when we look at in the form of per capita purchasing power, it is around 11.5 thousand, like 11,500. Now, when we do, those of us who are not very much familiar with this PPP concept, per capita PPP, it would mean that the purchasing power of our about $3,500, which we have as a per capita now, can buy us the same amount of goods that in the developed countries, say in US and all that, would buy for 11,500. So in terms of per capita PPP, we are quite good, and we are one of the better off in the region, except for Maldives. I think Maldives is far ahead, and then Thailand is also much ahead, about 7,000, is more than double the per capita income of Bhutan, and other countries are quite close by. But with this moving up or growing per capita income, what one would mean is also we have to look at, we are now graduating from LDC's status. In fact, we have already crossed the LDC requirement indicators, which country is supposed to be graduating when they have certain amount of per capita income and human development index and environmental vulnerability index. We have crossed in almost every of each of these three indicators, except that in environmental vulnerability we are very close, and then is quite doubtful. Sometimes we are a little low, sometimes a little high, but in others we have crossed much more. In fact, in per capita income we have crossed almost more than the double. So very soon, in fact, they will be declaring us outside of the LDC bracket, and that will have also may have some implications which I will discuss at a later stage. Next slide, please. Now let us look at our public expenditure pattern, which is very important. And I generated this graph using our public expenditure pattern, public expenditure data for different years. And because I wanted to see what is going to be future like in terms of public expenditure, public policy. Basically, this is the fiscal policy pattern that we see through the public expenditure. Now, these yellow bars that you see here is the current expenditure. The blue curve here you see is the government budget, which is the source of planned source for financing the expenditure. The total expenditure is this gray line, the graph. And here we can see our total expenditure is going to be much more than the budget, which would mean this budget is coming from different sources. By the way, the sources of budget for us would be our internal revenue and external financing, and both internal financing. And even with that also, we will have certain gap between the total expenditure and total expenditure and our budget. Now that would call for, and is likely to be increasing in future. It would probably mean that we will have our, in the immediate future, we will have our fiscal deficit going up. I will have a separate slide on the fiscal deficit, that gap that we have. But right now, it's also important to note, very important to note is, of course, there may be some fiscal deficit, but the very important aspect is that our current expenditure versus the capital expenditure. Our capital expenditure is the gap between this total expenditure and this current expenditure, for which the linear trend is this red dotted line, whereas the gray dotted line is the total expenditure. This is the linear trend. Now, if you look at the gap or the vertical distance between these two lines, you will very clearly see that this vertical distance is growing as we go into the future. What does that mean? It would mean that the capital expenditure is going to be much higher than the current expenditure. Now, current expenditure and capital expenditure used to be more or less very similar, or towards the beginning, current expenditure used to be higher than the capital expenditure, but capital expenditure going up and going more sharply than the current expenditure, despite the fact that it's going to be a little bit of deficit financing in the immediate future, does not show us that, it shows us that our capital formation is going to grow, or investment is going to grow, and that will have an impact on our economic growth. It is the capital expenditure or the investment that brings growth in near future. Of course, there may be some gestation period and some lag period will be there, but it is good that our capital expenditure expansion is going to go higher. And this is very encouraging for the economy in the post-COVID scenario. Next slide, please. Now, if you look at the capital formation in terms of GDP in the overall SAARC countries and in Thailand, well, except for Pakistan, I think they have only 13%, whereas all other countries are quite high. Like Bangladesh is 31%, Bhutan is around 34%, and quite consistent because it has now will be further growing up because there is a little dip here and then it will grow further. And even Thailand, 24%, Sri Lanka is 26%. So all other countries, they had been putting as a percentage of GDP, it also would mean capital formation basically in a rough term will tell us about the investment. This is the investment in terms of productive assets, in terms of assets that can be used and reused, or it is the asset that will help us in generating income or saving some of the cost. So, and it will generate income or reduce our or control our cost for not just for 1 year, for many years to come till the asset is being used. Therefore, if we put money into these assets and if we see a growing pattern of expenditure in this kind of assets, it will signal the growth that may take place in future. However, the caveat here is that the investment in this kind of goods will have to be very carefully chosen so that it goes into productive assets rather than the comfort assets. There are different kinds of assets. If we put in this into a comfort assets, like comfortable vehicles and all the wonderful residential building that may not generate income or even help reduce so much of cost, then that will be a more counterproductive. But if money is being invested into these productive assets, that will really help us. And may I have the next slide, please? Now, if you look at the expenditure components as a percentage of GDP, again, from this side also, you see overall capital expenditure as a percentage of GDP also in Bhutan, it has been going up, and then it is forecasted to go up further after the COVID era, like COVID, post-COVID period, because during that time it has come down. If we can see this capital expenditure, this the first, the gray bar, this one, it has really shrunken, and now it's picking up gradually. And this has been even from the earlier figures also, we have seen that this is the normal trend even in other countries. Can I get a next slide, please? Now, when capital expenditure is going up and our own internal revenue generation is limited, then how it has been financed or how it's going to be financed? One of the main sources of finance would be then debt. And this debt comes either in the foreign debt or the public debt. Now, Bhutan, if you look at from the public debt component point of view, it's very, very high. At this current time, I think we're estimated to have about 131% of GDP in 2020. There is an increase from 126 in March last year, same time, 2021. Now, if you look at it, it's very high. In fact, we are probably the highest in the region. One thing that generally concerns is the debt to GDP ratio. But however, although it's so high and it's very alarming when we compare with other countries like Sri Lanka, if you look at Sri Lanka, they have crossed 100% and they had seen a economic crisis. It has really been deepened, and that has also created a political crisis there. And one of the reasons is the debt servicing and not being able to pay the debt that had really created this problem. Pakistan also has a very high debt to GDP ratio that is around 37%, and economic problems have already been seen there also. But Bhutan is much higher than what they are facing, and many people started asking whether Bhutan also will have a similar kind of situation like in Sri Lanka. it is is an important issue for all of us to think through. But however, we always also need to look at it. How have we used this debt in our investment? In what kind of debts have we used this? Have we used into comfort assets? Have we used this into consumption? Or have we used this into the self-paying investment projects? So that matters a lot, because most of the, about 73% of the debts is going into hydropower projects. And these are basically the Indian rupee debts. And once the power is being generated from here, they would be self-liquidated. And that is one of the things that we have to note. Therefore, getting really alarmed because of the high debt should not be there, because 73% of the total debt is into these self-paying debts. So remaining less than 30% debt is in for other purposes. Therefore, of the overall debt, again, we have to look at it and then see that about 70% of the debt is also of the total debt is the INR debt. So our foreign currency, of course, INR is still a foreign currency, but the dollar denominated debt is much lower in compared to the other countries. And these are into the self-paying projects, self-paying investment project. So just looking at the debt to GDP ratio, it may not be very conclusive to compare with those countries that are having problems in the region. But nevertheless, we have to be mindful about the debt to GDP ratio all the time. Next slide, please. Now, after I discuss about the fund requirement and the investment and then debt, now we also need to, on the overall macroeconomy, we also need to look at how have we been financing our annual plans. Now, there is something called a fiscal deficit, which I'm sure everybody will understand what has been the sources of fund and what has been the investment or the expenditure in a year. That gives us a fiscal deficit scenario. Now, it has grown up to about 9.3% in 21-22. It's quite high. And this fiscal deficit basically is due to because why did the high fiscal deficit happen in 21-22 when it was only about 1.5% of GDP in 2018? Is basically because there was a real shortfall in the domestic revenue. There was a lot of increased expenditure to fight pandemic. There was Bhutan has gone very cautiously towards fighting pandemic, and then to looking into the welfare schemes of the peoples. We established that relief fund for the people, those who were very badly affected by the pandemic. That has cost, that also has a cost, quite a huge cost. And then during the crisis, there were also adoption to tax cuts during this difficult period, because people, business houses were not able to do the business that well. And a lot of fiscal and monetary plans were put in place that really did help the community and the people who were affected. So that has pulled down the revenue bit. And also there was also a decrease in the revenue from the hydro part, because Bhutan's main income source is the hydro export, and that was little affected because there was also a plant shut down for certain months, and did not earn anything from a lot of areas like tourism. Export was very badly hit. So a lot of revenues were being affected, and that's why the revenue was much fell short of the expenditure, and that created the fiscal deficit during that time. With the revenue likely to decline, the deficit is projected to further widen at 11.2% of GDP in 2023. This is what the RGOB budget report says, because domestic revenue is, for the domestic revenue to pick up, it will take some time, I guess. And the bigger projects, the bigger power plants, some of them are about to be completed, that will come into the economic pipeline little later only. Therefore, immediately post COVID period, this fiscal deficit would still be high, and is one of the reasons is also because there is going to be expansion in the capital expenditure, as we saw from that distance between these two lines earlier, was going to be increased, and then that will also create some of the gap. However, the forecast or the MF expectations is also there that it would be brought below 5% level after 2023. Therefore, during this immediate post-COVID period, the fiscal deficit is going to be high, but it's going to be more, the financing would be more into the capital expenditure. Next slide, please. Now, the other aspect is on the current account deficit. Current account deficit, now when we understand this current account deficit, it's also important to understand trade, balance of trade, current account deficit, and balance of payment, these three terms. Now, the balance of trade has been affected because our imports, Bhutan is an import-driven country, and whether there was a economic problems or the COVID or not, we had to continue importing our foodstuffs. And again, with the disturbance in the fuel price, that has really impacted us in terms of import cost on the petroleum products. And in the past, except in the past, what happened was also, despite the fact that there was a lot of economic problems, our import of comfort assets continued. That is the import of personal vehicles and all that had continued. And our revenue from our own side was not going up. Our export was not going up. Even the hydro export was declined. A lot of expenditure that to fight COVID had to be made, and some concessional public concessions on public financing. There is on fiscal policy on tax and all that. So that has really created current account deficit also, and this is going to be a problem if it continued if this growth continues in this way for the long term, because it's estimated around 23.6% in 22, which is very, very high. And it is, of course, estimated to come down at a later stage. However, as the trade or the export is going start increasing later on, it will help us and it will come down. But in 2021, if you see, our export was just about 58 billion, whereas the import was 90 billion, and it's just about half of the import. Export is covering just half of the import in that year. But we expect that economy is going to pick up and is going to close this gap in the post-COVID era. Basically, again, here also our import is mostly from India, because our trade, over 82% of our trading is with India. And now I think in order to control this, government is also taking a very cautious step of controlling unnecessary exports and unnecessary imports, and the imports especially pertaining to the comfort assets. And if we did that, I think this will calm down and it will do well. Now, the projection from the Minister of Finance is also this current account deficit is going to narrow down as the trade balance will improve as electricity export increases with commissioning of new hydro power plants. And there are 3 in the pipeline in the medium term. Next slide, please. Now, on the macro front, another issues that we have to look at is the labor market. It is very much because of the COVID, the labor market is also very much affected. Now, unemployment in Bhutan used to be around 2.5% to 3%, but suddenly it has gone to about 5%. Now it is at about close to 5%. But overall, unemployment.
Sorry to disturb you. Could we a little bit go a little faster? I want you to sort of stop for discussion at about 11 o'clock, which is another 10 minutes from now. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, my first session would be a little longer, I guess. In the second sessions, I have much shorter materials. Therefore, of course, I will go a bit quick, faster now.
Okay, thank you.
But one thing to note here is also about the youth unemployment. This is very alarming. Youth unemployment is quite alarming here, and whereas the overall unemployment is around 5%, which is manageable or which is in line with the regional average. Next slide, please. Next. Now, if you look at the unemployment in the SAARC countries and also in the Thailand, now Bhutan overall, if you look at it, is quite low. Even with these, about 5% is okay because regional average is around 6. And if you look at the Thailand's data, they have picked up very fast, although the economy was also hit about 6.2%, but on front of unemployment, they have started solving it quite fast. Now it's only about 1.4%. Next slide, please. Now we can go to the next. This does not. Next, please. Next. We'll skip this one. Now, certain regions that I always said that I would discuss on the fiscal challenges given this current scenario. Let's go to the next. Now, if you look at the prospects and some of the challenges on the fiscal side, we will see fiscal deficit going to go up in the medium term and gradually going to come down. There will be deterioration in the fiscal balance to be scaled up because of the capital expenditure going to go up, revenue getting subdued, including hydro profit transfers in the medium term. The trend should reverse as the economic conditions improves and domestic revenue goes on increasing. Hydro revenue increases after a certain period of time. There is an introduction of GST now is going to be introduced, and that will bring more transparency and tax payment, and the tax revenue is expected to go up. And debt is projected to remain quite high in the short term. These are some of the scenarios that we can draw from the fiscal sides. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide? Hello. Okay. Medium term growth would still be driven by hydro because of these new projects coming in, but it is going to facilitate the domestic industrial sector because we'll have a better firm power by then, and then our industrial growth, non-hydro development is expected to pick up because of the ability of the firm power. Tourism sector is probably going to go beyond pre-pandemic period because we are focusing more on quality, seasonality, sustainability, and geographical distributions in the new policy. But however, the new policy in terms of pricing and the policy itself is still to be tested, but the expectations and our belief is that tourism is going to improve also. And Bhutan during the COVID period has gone much ahead in terms of compared to its own history in terms of digitalization, creating some of the enabling environment for private sector and thinking through the economic diversifications in the non-hydro sector. Well, this, especially the digitalization, would promote a lot of transparency, and that would, in my view, will curtail unnecessary expenditure and corruptions, and that would help reforming the economy. Next slide, please. Yeah, can I get the next slide? Now, challenges we have in the non-hydro. Of course, we are talking a lot about making an investment in the non-hydro sector, because hydro sector has its own problem at the long run. But in others, we still have challenges of where should we put in, in which areas should we make investment, or where do we have the competitiveness, because there is high cost, small domestic market, and these are some of the issues, and lack of poor competitiveness in some of the market. These are some of the challenges we will have to work on and then really fight through these issues. Job creations outside the public sector and agriculture has been very limited, and agriculture, as we know, has about 60% of the people working there and then contributing only about 12 to 15% out to the GDP. There is the other challenge that we are facing right now, because all our investment has been put into one basket kind of thing, mostly in the hydro, but there is going to be an impact of climate change. Changes of glacial fed rivers will reduce hydropower productions and the government revenue in the long run. That is going to remain a challenge. That's why we need to diversify. Developing private sector to generate jobs and diversify the economy versus sustainable natural environment. Because when we need to make investment and let private sector grow, because we also need to draw resources from the environment, but Bhutan is very cautious about the protections of environment and preserving environment. Therefore, how do we balance these two aspects of growing as well as sustaining and preserving? This is going to still be a problem. And the other challenge would be capital inflow, especially in form of the grants from the donor countries once we graduate the LDC status. So these are some of the challenges Bhutan is going, in my view, we will be facing. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, in areas of unemployment, as this goes up, it will have a lot of negative impact individually and to the broader community. Now, we also face problems in terms of lack of labor. We also have unemployment problem, especially on the when you talk about the youth. So youth unemployment, we have to be very mindful, because there is going to have a loss to the economy welfare, limit to production, because we will have able citizens not being able to participate in the economic productivity or economic in the production systems of the overall economic ecosystems. And that would erode the human capital, not working for some times, and then gradually getting into that kind of dependency track for the youth, depending on the parents. We should not see this. And because of this, they will also feel social exclusions and would be crime and social instability could be some of the negative impact if we are not mindful about addressing to the youth unemployment from the very beginning. So next slide, please. Yes, Shoaib, can I go to the next? Now, how are we going to, because there is a contradictions in my view. Unemployment is growing versus development is stagnated due to lack of labor. Because during the COVID period, we have seen that quite a number of projects could not take up because of the labor problem. Of course, materials, we could somehow manage it and bring it in, but the labor shortage was the real problem. And then we all were also talking about the unemployment problem. So there is some kind of mismatch in our availability of manpower and also willingness to take up the available job, plus the demand for labor in certain sectors. So this issue is yet to be addressed. We have to work on this. And we always talk about the Australia-Canada phobia for the productive labor force. Of course, there is a forex inflow. Remittance is happening, but again, there is loss of productive manpower. How do we address this? This is still a challenge. And then, when people go out, this is basically, again, with more experience, productive, 4 to 5 years, 6 years experience, well-qualified manpower going out. They will be contributing to the foreign exchange. But the thing is, a country is also losing the productive manpower. So there is an issue in this one. So we need to address this also. So next slide, please. I think I'm reaching to the very close to the final challenge. And diversification of export destinations for greater regional integrations. Because Bhutan, beside India, is also doing its trade with Bangladesh, Nepal, and Thailand. Also, Thailand is the fourth country with which we do the fourth biggest trade we do is with Thailand, and Bangladesh is very important. Nepal, followed by Bangladesh and Nepal. But in this, how do we integrate? We also see a lot of regional issues to be sorted out in terms of smooth transportation of goods from one country to another, because this is going to be, we need to manage this smooth transportation systems, because I'm sure all other countries are also facing the similar kind of problems in terms of transport routes. Of course, we have the understanding by the SAPTA and all these things, but still in the ground reality we'll have to address too. And other challenge in the fiscal side would be improving the agriculture and horticulture productivity, product quality, and regional access to the market. Now we have also had circumstances where we produce, don't get the market because of the quality, sometimes, or because of our handling problem, or sometimes because of, I don't know how we feel in terms of getting access to the market. We see farmers being encouraged by the policymakers, they produce, and at the end don't get the market. Very recently, I have seen some of the farmers dumping their product, to the cattle, and this is quite a frequently seen issues in Bhutan. But how to get connected with the farmers, collect and then facilitate the marketing aspects needs to be looked at. And then processing industry for agriculture product. Yes, this is another challenge. We always talk about the market size, but we also need to look at markets in the regional market. We have to look at the bigger market in the region. We don't have enough cold storage facilities. That's why we see sometimes we export the same materials and we import back the same materials at higher price at a later stage. This is quite unusual, because to create that time utility for the products, we have lacked certain resources which we need to focus into. Next slide, please. The final one, I guess. These are some of the challenges and the prospects on the fiscal side, and in the second sessions, I will be discussing on the monetary side. I'm sorry, because there may have been so many questions already raised, because I had a little bit of problem, so I needed to rush. Now I'll check some of the questions if participants have asked. Okay, group holding investment. Okay, so I didn't see any, so I hand over the floor to the moderator and to see if there are any questions that I can answer.
Thank you, Dr. Kharka, for your very interesting presentation, a comprehensive one, because you really touched on some of the major macroeconomic issues that are facing Bhutan at the moment, and I know you're going to continue to discussion in the next session. We wanted to take a break because, as we know, the long sessions are not as productive as they can be.
Bhandari, your sound is a little bit low.
So what I'm going to do is we're going to ask our participants to to raise questions and participate in discussions, and this request extends to all participants, whether they are Bhutanese or they are from outside the region. So please feel free to raise your hands or just ask a question at the screen, or just unmute and intervene. Sorry, Dhamma, did you want to say something?
Mr. Bhandari, officials from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bhutan, raise hand.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, all right. So before I do that, I will note that I have a question here, from Kezang, who is who introduced himself, and he's in I think he's head of the Management Institute, in Bhutan. His question. Commissioning of hydropower projects like Punasangtu 1 and Punasangtu 2 impact on our debt payment capacity. A very, very pertinent question. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
If we look at the overall investment in these two projects, it has gone by more than twofolds in investment from what it was planned for. And that way the repayment will take longer period, because the self-paying capacity would be there, but the paying back period would be much longer. But however, these Punasangtu projects, I think, even the capacity of generations for one of the projects is going to be a little lower because of the change in the modality in the project itself. From the tunnel, from the dam systems to the barrage later on. That's why I think, and the cost of energy from these two projects is likely to be much higher than what we used to enjoy in the past. So that way the paying loan paying or the liquidating, in my view, would be a little longer.
Thank you. Okay, so now I give the floor to somebody from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Please identify yourself and ask the question, please.
Yes, thank you, sir. This is Serin Hadin from Foreign Ministry. And Dhamma, sir, I wanted to thank you so much. It's so good to see you after such a long time. I'm one of your students as well. And thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I wanted to, on behalf of my colleagues as well, I wanted to thank you, sir, for your excellent presentation. And I know with very little economics background, it has certainly enhanced my and my colleagues' perspective and understanding on the overall macroeconomic situation of the country. And I was just wondering about one particular that has always failed to, I failed to understand this, because even when we had some internal discussion, it was made clear to us that the fiscal deficit of the country is very bad in comparison to the other SAARC countries. And yet again, we are not, our economic situation, we are not in the economic crisis like Sri Lanka and Pakistan are. And the simple explanation that was given to me then was, of course, because our foreign exchange situation is better than theirs. And of course, just now, sir also mentioned about how we have invested maybe even though we have a grave fiscal, I mean, our fiscal situation is worse than the others, but it also depends on where we have invested, mainly on the capital expenditure. So I just wonder that's why one of my questions would be like, maybe you would like to elaborate a little on this, like to enhance our understanding on that. The second question is like, now Foreign Ministry, of course, economic diplomacy has always been a very, has been a part of foreign policy, but now we, because of the ongoing transformation exercises, and so we are going to take the economic diplomacy a little aggressively. In fact, we may even be having our economic diplomacy department also, which is yet to come true. So in that respect, as we go forward, what advice would you like to give us, like, or where should we really focus on? And given your if we take on, when we take on the economic diplomacy like more aggressively, like, as you touch on in the next few hour, in the next hour presentation or tomorrow's, I don't know, maybe you could, sometimes touch on where we could focus on also. Of course, you have identified the challenges. We can see that those are some of the common challenges that has been identified. But at the same time, as a ministry that we are who is trying to pursue economic diplomacy a little more aggressively, if you could highlight certain aspects of it. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was so good to see you. So good to see you. I mean.
Thank you. Thank you so much to hear your voice. I couldn't see your picture because it was not coming onto the screen. Very happy to hear your voice, and then really, I would have loved to answer your questions if I had the ready-made answer. But however, the fiscal deficit questions, as you say, it is growing, and it will grow a little further in my view in the medium term, as I stated earlier. Fiscal deficit, normally it is bad because it simply talks about the gap between what you can finance and what you need, which means if you have a shortage of financing sources, then what is required, that's where the deficit would come in. Which means our export, our revenue generations, all that is falling short of what is needed to finance our consumption and investment. And it is getting quite high, and then expected to go to, as I said, 23% somewhere in the medium in term, around 11% right now. However, the answer that you had been hearing also, we have a foreign exchange quite comfortable, would be one, because this fiscal, that gap is also financed through external borrowing and also through your internal borrowing, deficit financing. Many developed countries also will have this deficit very high. And looking at other countries, of course, people might say, why we are so much worried? But one thing we have to look at it is, this deficit is happening, why? Where have we put in the money? That is very important. If we are putting the money into the day-to-day consumption and in acquiring the non-productive assets more than into the productive asset that would generate the value, that would generate the income in the near future, then the worry is during the gestation period of these investment projects. Therefore, I would still see after 1 or 2 years, after we make some expansion in the investment areas and cut down into the consumption areas, then obviously this will come down, and these investment areas will start giving us revenue at a later stage. So we should not have big worry. Of course, deficit is a little bit of worry all the time. The question is, where have we put in this money? Listen.
Thank you, Dambar. I think thank you, Tsering, for your very interesting question. Would you want to comment or share your views on her second question, which is part of a restructuring going on in the process at the moment, and there is a talk that the trade issues are going to be dealt by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I think as a head of the division or the section, division rather, I think she's very curious to know what economic diplomacy can foreign ministry play through their missions. If you have some views to share,
Um,
please do. Otherwise, we can go to other questions.
I can rethink on this. I'm not very much ready on my thought also because it's just happening in Bhutan. The whole function is being transferred, but the expertise, as we say, the whole expertise from there also is going to move. I don't know how they are going to manage it, but I really have not thought on this.
Okay, thank you, Dumber. I will, Tsering, as an ex-foreign service officer and an economic affairs officer, I may have some views, but I'll share, I'll leave it towards the end and I'll give chance to others to ask the question. Rajan, you have a question for Dr. Kharga. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Karka. It was a very nice presentation with all the indicators of the micro and the macroeconomics of, indicators of Bhutan. I really appreciate that. One or two questions related to the connectivity and related to the capacity enhancement within the BIMSTEC regions is that, there is a lot of trade that can happen within the region. So how is Bhutan investing? You have invested majority nearly about 73% in the hydropower from the 135% depth that you have. That's what you said. But how much is it related to the digitalization of trade or on the connectivity issues or related to how you are going to make the exports, identify different countries, how the market access is going to happen in different countries, what are the different type of products that you are looking into enhancing and increasing the productivity, what is the status of Bhutan at the moment for export competitiveness as regards compliance with the international, requirements of quality, and then the infrastructure that are needed for as regards storage, warehousing, and on the coordinated border management within the region, be it among BIMSTEC regions or with BBI and Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal region for making trade happen. Because Nepal at the moment is demanding for a coordinated border management system where the data within these regions can be shared very easily and the business predictability as well as transparency and accountability is increased. Is Bhutan looking into this provisions as well? And how much of budget has been separated in order to make this happen? This is one part of my question. The other thing is, how about Bhutan, Nepal, India, or Bangladesh, or in the region, have coming into one place, the private sector and the stakeholders themselves, in order to, discuss on how we are going to go about in order to make trade happen, and how the economics can be developed, and how employments can be generated, and how technology and innovations can be brought forward. There's a lot of lessons that we can learn from Bhutan as regard environmental concerns are concerned, as well as other issues. The Nepal and Bhutan, we share the same landlockness, and then we have the similar type of problems. So if we can collaborate more on the private sector as well as the stakeholders level in order to know and simulate and know the real happening and the experience, I think that will help us a lot to move forward in future. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rajan. Thank you so much. This is the questions that you have raised. In fact, rather than the questions, I would say the issues that you have raised is something that we really need to work on, I guess. On the first part of your questions, that is more into the digitalizations and areas other than the hydro sector where we can cooperate. Well, I think gradually the country is moving into digitalizations and making informations more available so that the commodity availability of each of these countries would be more transparently known to our neighbors. Now, today, as I was talking to you, Bhutan is basically a agrarian country where, of course, as we know, even Nepal or other countries also in the regions with a lot of fragmented farming structure, the scale or economy of scale in our production is not happening. And even to commercialize this, the landscape is not really except for some countries, I guess, like Bhutan and Nepal has the issues of landscape even for, doing a commercial farming. But however, there are areas where we can look into our potentials and high value crop like horticulture crops and processing of those crops, and then getting access to the regional market through quality improvement is one of the areas that I think we need to work on. Because today we produce things, and before we reach to the market, the way that we do our quality control, packaging, everything is not to the standard. Therefore, the countries will have to work on standardization process, quality control process, and keeping the freshness of the products through cold storage facilities and transportation, a proper transportation system. These are some of the areas in Bhutan also I have known that very frequently discussed, talked about. And I think this is because of this reason, the increase in the number of cold storage is also happening right now. Otherwise, probably, I don't know the experience of Nepal. In Bhutan, what we have is when we have in certain seasons, we produce vegetables and fruits in excess, then we export and it's being stored in some our neighboring countries, and we tend to buy back the same stuff at a higher price. So how do you, in fact, work on those issues so that you can, benefit out of the regional access to the market, plus safeguarding your own products, time utility, we can say, or the place utility. So these are areas that I think Bhutan is working on. However, the majority of our investment and export is in the hydro. In the medium term is going to be hydro only. But hydro with the, right now, when we say hydro is the big one, yes, it is true, but to come up with the industries or the manufacturing industries in Bhutan in more numbers, again, we run short of the energy itself in certain time. So the firm power, protections of firm power and making use those of these firm powers and using that as a raw material, facilitating the industrial growth is another area that we are looking into. Now, that's where now again, as you know, the mountains, the transport, if we get into again the high volume kind of goods, the transportation cost is going to be at our disadvantage. That's why, again, to put them into the border area and then working on or transporting the raw materials from central part would still pose some kind of disadvantage. But yet, we always tend to believe, which is almost an indirect kind of subsidy of talking about power energy cost compared to the region. So that may give us little advantage in that. Now, if I get to your second part, can we not facilitate discussions?
Dumber, I want to break in about 5-6 minutes.
Okay,
so
sir.
Please
Yeah.
be quick. I have two other questions.
Let me address to the second part of the issues that Mr. Radhan has raised. That is, how can we make trade happen within the SAARC regions? Of course, I have raised this issue as a questions in my second presentation towards the end also. But I would like to, since this has come up now, I would like to also highlight that we have failed in the SAARC regions. In the regions, in fact, making the regional trade happen, if we look at our own potential, I think is very huge, and then not even 1/5 of the potential in terms of trade that could happen in the region is being tapped. And there are a lot of regions in this, and which many of us know, this is not only the economic regions, these are also some are political regions, some are market access regions, something to do with the competitiveness, all the issues are there. And we have signed in the SAARC like SAPTA long ago with the free trade agreement and all that. But if we look at it, among the SAARC nations, how well are we connected and integrated with is quite poor. Of course, Bhutan is highly integrated with Indian economy in terms of the trade, but other than that, it is quite weak link. That's why having a platform, of course, the platforms are there, but discussing and later on practicing, these are the two things I think are getting, like they are completely different. What we agree on paper or what we discuss and what we practice at the field, this will have to be synchronized. So the remaining component, I think, as Daso Achut is very hurry in the, of course, I see I've exceeded my time quite so much, so I would like to stop it here and then let it, the floor be taken up by the moderator.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for answering my questions, sir.
You know,
Thank you.
Rajan, you and I can have a lot of discussion on it, but that's for a different session. All right. Before we break, I want Dummer to answer two quick questions. Rather, two questions. Answer quickly. Sorry for my English.
Okay.
One of them is from the Ministry of Finance. Why is there a huge difference in the GDP growth rate forecast by ADB and RMA for 2023? I don't know whether you have an answer for that, but I don't know. I mean, our colleagues who are participating from RMA may be able to enlighten later on, but I will give you the chance here if you have any observations very quickly on that, then I'll come to the next question.
This is what I was also looking at it. You know, there's a big difference. In fact, ADB and the World Bank has forecasted very good growth for us. But I don't know, it also depends on the timing. Because if you take, and also the approach, I don't know which approach and which model they took in terms of forecasting. If you take the linear growth from 10% down, then the curve, the linear curve would already be downturned. And maybe the very conservative approach was taken by RMA. And if you take the outliers out and show the trend, exponential trend, it goes quite high. I have tested the data in two ways for my own interest. I use the exponential equations, log equations, and the linear. So these three different kind of forecasting techniques give you totally different three results. And also, if you take out the outlier, negative 10.1% is an outlier. You throw that outlier and take the moving average, the growth is very good. But if you put that, then it's down. So it depends on how they have done it, I guess.
Thank you. I think this is also something that, RMB colleagues should note and have a dialogue with ADB, or at least, exchange notes with them. But I tend to agree with Dummer. Perhaps we tend to be a little bit more conservative in our forecast than the other organizations. The next question is, Dummer, there is one question about inflation. This is from Gopal Pradhan from Ministry of Economic Affairs. It says inflation has been the concern during the post-COVID period. What do you think should be some of the suitable measures to address this issue? Very important questions. I don't know.
Very briefly, because I termed this inflation as, of course, it is the macroeconomic variable from both the side, fiscal and monetary. Mostly to look at the inflation and controlling inflation, basically monetary policy use this and then target inflation. And that's why I have kept this for the second session. However, some of the measures that we should know about the inflation is inflation takes place when products, consumers' products or the investment intermediate goods products demand is much higher than what the supply is. Right now, the inflation and certain component of inflation in our concept where our economy is highly integrated with the Indian economy, where we are import driven. That's why along with the goods, inflation also comes in. That's what we term in and as I call it a walk-in inflation or borrowed inflation also. attached to the import of goods. And my own research analysis, which I have done a few years ago, showed about 66% of the inflation is coming along the goods.
Right.
And about only 34% of the inflation is indigenous. Now, how much can you do to control your inflation? One of the things is either you increase the domestic production, come up with the import substitutions in goods, so that some of the inflations that we import with the goods is stopped at the source itself, but you start producing yourself and meeting the demand indigenously. So these are some of the issues. And the recent inflation, as you know, is also because of the energy prices, which is beyond the control of even anyone else. And then it has gone up, and that has impacted in multiple ways, in the form of energy itself, in the form of goods and services that has to be transported, So these are some of the causes, but it's not going to be continuing for long. But the source of inflations, if we think about, is coming through imports. Then in such cases, we have to also be producing at least majority of the goods and services we consume ourselves. And there are areas where import substitutions industry should be there, but we always are mindful about economics of substitutions. Yes. Is it cheaper to produce at home? Why don't we buy across the border when we have to buy our indigenous product at 20 niltrum, whereas we get it at 50 niltrum there? So this mindset, how do we address? Then only the inflation also can be addressed from that angle.
All right. Thank you, Dummer, for that very poignant comment. That only I can only recall just yesterday. I think I was reading that the moment our Funchuling border opened, the Bhutanese, as expected, went to Jaigaon, and there was a comment that the vegetables were 100%, he says 50% cheaper in Jaigaon, or maybe it was 100%, I don't know. And so he was saying, then only he finds out that, how much we have been paying within Bhutan. Of course, this has been a very extraordinary situation for the last couple of years due to COVID. And our only hope is that things will improve in the near future. All right. Is there anybody really dying to ask a question before I take a short break? Please raise your hands. Is MFA Bhutan again? Hello, Foreign Ministry Bhutan.
Thank you, sir, for giving us the opportunity, but we'll reserve our questions for the next session, if there is at all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tsering. Okay, in that case, shall we
Mr. Bhandari, Pema Wangdi showed raise hand.
Oh yeah, Pema, Ministry of Finance, please come in.
Not exactly a question, just an observation.
Right.
In one of the slides, I saw their introduction of GST in FY 22-23. So I'm not sure if this is really correct. Thank you.
Okay. Damar, you want to add to that? Introduction of GST by 22-23. I don't know the source of your information.
No, the expectations and some of the policies stated that. I'm not very sure also how ready we are. But in the policies, at least by 2023, we are intending to implement GST to bring more transparency in terms of tax collections. And preparations going on, I guess, but some of the technological issues in terms of developing the software that was given to the domestic form did not materialize, I guess. Therefore, I don't know whether, but it's not being declared as that we are not going to do it. But there is a policy that by 2023 we are going to, it should happen. But readiness, I'm sure Minister of Finance would know much better than what I would do, because when I was discussing with the some of my colleagues in the revenue custom also, they said not very sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dumber. I think you are correct. But the only information I know is that it was not done, from July as it was expected, and I think there is no given target. But I guess this government, before it leaves, maybe want to do it. I think because they were the ones who really started the process, and I hope it happens by 2023, because that's their last year anyway. But if it doesn't happen in 2023 and the next government comes, then one doesn't know. But I think as people dealing with economic and trade issues, I think Dumber, I agree with Dumber that if GST is brought in, while there may be adjustments for some time, eventually I think it will streamline the tax collection process and lead to additional revenues. Thank you. So it's 11:35 at the moment. I would like to ask you to come at 5 to 12, please. A short break. And Dummer, you will take about half an hour for the next session.
Yep. Yeah, I will try to complete in half an hour.
Yeah.
Maybe little longer, maybe about maximum 40 minutes.
Okay, fine. No, I don't want to rush you, because there's a lot of interest expectedly, and the only thing is that I want to give sufficient time for people to ask questions. So we'll start in about we'll come back in about 20 minutes. All right. Okay. Please. Yeah. All right. See you in 20 minutes.
So, Mr. Bhandari, we will start the session at
11:55.
11:55 Bhutan time. Okay. Thank you.
Namaste, nice to see you. How are you?
Oh, good. How are you?
Who is this?
I'm good. Where are you?
I'm in Australia, and then I was requested, so I came here.
You are still struggling.
I go so.
Are you still struggling with your presentation? Learn from
मेरो presentation बनाउँदैछु. Yesterday I couldn't because I had some family problem. I'm still working on it.
Yeah, okay, as long as you give it to us by the end of the day.
Yeah, I'll give you.
So this, yeah, no.
Where are you? This is in Bhutan. You are around.
Canada,
Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Oh, you're in Melbourne. Oh, okay.
तर होइन कसैले थाहा पाउँदैन पछाडि हेरौँ न अन्त यहाँतिर आएर
I was surprised to see him go today, because yesterday we agreed he's going to wear something decent casual,
Because I didn't know that my son's go is here. But it was here only.
As expected, very, very, very good. अलिकति त्यही हो, अलिकति छोटो भयो कि यो एडभान्स इन्फर्मेसनको लागि. So, but it's not bad. It's more than 50 people here, त्यस्तै हो. अब यस्तो खाले त अब we need to do more.
यस्तो पनि हुन्छ नि, because it is also to do with the interest, and we talk, but thing is how many of us are really serious.
Exactly. त्यस्तै हुँदैछ नि त. त्यस्तै हुँदैछ अब के गर्ने.
Dr. Farka, may I? We conducted 25 sessions under this program for Bhutanese participants, and it is one of the finest session in my view, up to date.
Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Khaled.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
भाइ चिया पिउनुहोस् के गर्नुहोस्
Good to see you, Dr. Dhakal.
Yes. I'll take a small break because they are going to give me some coffee.
Good to see you, Dr. Dhakal. Chandrasekhar.
Good to see you. How are you?
Fine, everything's fine.
So tomorrow I have a presentation.
Yes.
I'm working on it.
Yes. So
I'll share my presentation with Achut by evening today because I couldn't work on it. I had some issues.
Yes. It is fine. You can you can just send me the presentation just before your session. Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you, and see you tomorrow.
Okay.